Hello, this is Wilmore2, and how are you? Today we're going to be looking at a bunch of hot source challenges. If you don't know what they are, these are extra levels that are exclusive to the level archive found in the Reflourished Discord. These hot source challenges are essentially super hard versions of Penny's challenges, with the main twist being that each one adds in extra gimmicks to mix up the gameplay. We'll go starting with the true chosen one. Now, truth be told, the hot source version of this level is very difficult to complete with just one seed slot, because you don't have Thymorp, you only have 5 gold tiles. There's barely any plants that can actually win. The most popular pick is Banana Launcher, and there's already a few people that have showcased how to beat this level with that. You can also use Mistletoe, technically. If you can keep the zombies freezed for long enough, then eventually Mistletoe's damage will be able to whittle them down. But because I want to try and show a different solution, we're playing the saucy version of this level, which is basically just easier than the main version. And we're using Boom Balloon Flower. This is from the upcoming Caligula's Carnival update. I don't know if this video is going to be going up when that has released or not. So if it hasn't yet, then I guess you can consider this a preview. And these balloons, they do 400 damage per explosion instead of 300, and if you stack them, then they do an extra 300 damage per extra stack, which means if you can get 2 stacks of balloons, then that'll do 1100 damage, just enough to be able to deal with these rock punches. So, at least in the saucy version, this can definitely work as a substitute to Banana Launcher, one that lets you set up mines ahead of time to deal with the zombies. If you don't use the mine method, then you have to hit these zombies with 3 balloons directly in order to get rid of them. But you can see it's very easy to set up these balloons at the back to deal with any pterodactyls that come in. You can actually set up the balloons in column 2 as well. You don't have to do it in column 1, and it'll work just fine. Later on in the level, you do get lots of gravestones that show up. So usually it's best to just ignore those, because otherwise you end up wasting balloons trying to get rid of them. With this version of Boom Balloon Flower, you can just use 2, otherwise it would take a third, since the balloons only deal 300 damage in version 1.2.3. Having Thymorp is really useful as well. While Thymorp's warping all the zombies, it gives you time to get an extra set of balloons going. Of course, you don't have that in the hot source version, so I'm not fully sure if this strategy will work in the Caligula's Carnival update without using Thymorp, but I'm sure it's doable if you put enough time and dedication into it. I'd definitely say that this strategy is a lot easier and mobile. Like with Banana Launcher, they reload slow enough and deal enough damage with each impact that you can definitely do it off with just the mouse, but because of how many Boom Balloon Flowers you have to control here, I definitely say that having the ability to use touch controls makes it a lot easier. You can just tap on a Boom Balloon Flower and then tap wherever it is that you want to put your balloons, instead of having to keep clicking and dragging, which is also for some reason the balloons don't seem to actually work when the Ankylosaurus comes in though, which is so weird to think about. I think the reason why that happens is because the balloons have their hitboxes not aligned to be able to hit the zombies as they get flung past, or they are just straight up immune to damage. It's got to be one of the two, I don't know which. If you have all your mines being set up properly, you can place your Boom Balloon Flowers further up into the lawn than just the first 3 columns, which is really nice. Although you have to, again, be careful with Ankylosaurus, because that'll keep knocking your middle lane all the way back if you're not careful, so sometimes you might want to actually place Boom Balloon Flowers at a space ahead. Of course, you do have shovels to make that a little bit easier in the saucy version, but since there's no shovel in the hot sauce version, that'll make things a little bit more difficult. In the saucy version you do have plant food as well, so having those doom balloons is pretty good. It makes it a little bit easier to do all of the greys, since this becomes so much more plentiful later on. That's about all I have to say for this first level, so let's move on. The True Chosen One was the first of these Hot Sauce challenges to be released. It was released as a custom challenge at first, but the first official one of these challenges is Penumbra Patrol. You might notice that at the top it says Ultraviolet Challenge. That's the old name for what we call Hot Sauce challenges now. There's a bit of a history behind how challenges became called Ultraviolet in the first place. It started with the idea of this Ultra Veteran Challenge. You can probably guess which is just like a harder version of the Veteran challenges, which are regularly released to the level archive. At some point it was brought up again as like the abbreviation UV, and then someone jokingly said Ultraviolet instead, and I saw that and I took that and used that as the name for the True Chosen One. Ultraviolet Challenge, the True Chosen One is the full title. And later on, when Penumbra Patrol got its veteran version, Jay made this level, but it was considered way too difficult. The only way that you could actually beat this one is by using plant food, which is the strategy that I'm using right now. The original strategy was to use Shadow Shroom, since the plant food effect could do infinite damage to any zombies already poisoned by another one of Shadow Shroom's poisons. So you use that, you just need 2 power tiles and 2 Shadow Shrooms, and then you can combine that with something to deal with all the poison immune zombies, aka Repair Imp. You can use Magnet Shroom for that purpose, so that's 3 power tiles, maybe 4, and you can easily deal with any zombies that show up. It's a really insane strategy. I didn't want to do that for this run, so instead of using Boom Balloon Flower, this is another plant that some people have used. Pulls off similar results, but you do need more power tiles, which means you need to save up more sun to get to that setup in the first place. It is possible to use Tile Turnip in the tar, so I did do that in order to save some space, and keep the plants further to the left side of the screen, since with the way that this strat works, you have to buy as much time as possible before you start spending your plant food, otherwise you will eventually run out and lose. That's also why we've got Imitated Power Lily, as well as Pumpkin, in order to keep the plants protected, make sure that they don't die. If the plants die, then obviously that's less plant food power. Something to watch out for is these Inventor Zombies, which can be a pain in the ass while you haven't fully set up your Tile Turnips, as well as any Gargantuars if those show up. So you do have to be careful with all that high health stuff, and make sure that you don't lose too early. But if you can make it to a point where you've got all your Tile Turnips set up, I think you want like 5 of them in order to be able to deal 3000 damage with these Doom Balloons. That is enough. If there are any Gargs left over, then just 2 balloons at most should be enough to deal with them. And once you've done that, you can easily deal with these waves. Thymorp as well can come along for the ride, just to make sure that you pull it off properly. And if the zombies get a bit too close, maybe because there's some jetpacks coming in, Blasternauts, then you can use Thymorp and save the day that way. Where was I going with the veteran story? Oh yeah, so yeah, this was originally a veteran challenge, but because this was too difficult, this was considered way too difficult, this was renamed to an Ultraviolet challenge using the same title that was already being used for those custom levels that I was making, and also there was one by Wasteland's Elf. I think that one's still in the custom levels. Unfortunately, that's like the only one the only ultraviolet challenge that I don't think will be released as a hot source challenge anytime soon, which is too bad. But anyway. So yeah, this Penumbra Patrol now exists, and there's a newer version of the Veteran challenge that is a lot easier. At least it's meant to be a lot easier. Like, basically, all that was really done was, like, reverting the changes to these tiles so that they are power tiles and gold tiles again. You really do need those gold tiles, by the way, because the extra sun that you get from the gold tiles, it really helps to keep up. I have a run that uses Collie Power. There's a few other people that have already done that, and I just decided to copy them. And Collie Power with some Pumpkin as well to make sure that all of the Gargantua attacks don't destroy your stuff. Collie Power works pretty well. I think I used Wintermelon as well. So yeah, you'll notice that it's usually best to make sure that the Doom Balloons are a little bit staggered with this run though, because it makes it easier to deal with your repair imps, you know, their machines. If you just have a Doom Balloon being spawned in from column 2, before all the other Doom Balloons come in from column 1, then that'll make sure that you have one Doom Balloon to get rid of any repair ups, and then the other Doom Balloons will come in to destroy the machines. Having that delay helps. Ultimately, this is kind of straightforward actually. You just have to keep spending plant food when the zombies get a bit too close. Make sure that you have a healthy supply of plant food. Of course, if you have 5 plant food slots, that makes this a little bit easier to avoid running out in the first place, but even without any upgrades, with just 3 slots, this is still very doable. So yeah, on to the next challenge. Okay, Double Time Shuffle Snuffle was the 3rd overall challenge of this type to be released. Of course, back then it was released as an ultraviolet challenge in custom levels, and that original version did have an ambush alert that would show up every time one of these waves would spawn in. If you remember the original version of Double Shuffle, these zombies came out in 2 separate waves. The whole gimmick with this one is that you have 2 waves spawning in at once, and if you are familiar with PvZ modding in general, you probably know what the reference was meant to be. The original version of this level did straight up have the double wave alert show up, like a lot of these waves, whenever, you know, 2 waves spawned in at once, which is fairly often. But that did have to be omitted for the final official release of this level, mainly because Ecclesiast stuff isn't really something that deserves to be seen in the actual mod, and that includes with the level archive. Part of me does wish that we could include double wave alerts in this level, but at the same time, like, if you know about the history behind Ecclesiast stuff, you'll know that there's a lot of trouble involved in it, and usually it's best to just not get involved with it if you can. I suppose I could go on a whole tangent about how Ecclesiast has changed hands, but I don't know enough about it to really be able to talk about it. I do know though that there are lots of people that have picked up Ecclesiast ever since it went into open source, you know, with the original creators, including the not very well respected figure. Yeah, it's weird to talk about here. So this level gets really dense because of how many zombies are spawned in at once. Because of that, this does have a saucy version, where you have to destroy more of the wave before the next one comes in, just to make things a little bit fairer. Although, to be honest, I feel like that one plays a lot more like just a regular level, because of that. Like, it's very generous, and you do get lots of extra plant food too. Like, you get a lot of plant food to begin with. You get like 6, and then there's an extra 3 added on top. I don't know why I decided that that would be worthy, but I suppose if you aren't careful, you can still get overwhelmed by the sheer numbers. And in this run, I did eventually have to start using Ultimata's plant food. Since I was only using 2 Ultimatas, that meant that these Ultimatas could be moved around in order to focus them onto like Gargs and stuff. So Ultimata ended up being really needed in order to keep up with all the sun that we had to spend on all the primal sunflowers. We weren't running a proper wall. Not that it would matter, because I'm pretty sure that those pianists would destroy our walls like instantly. There's just way too many zombies in this version of the level to really be able to keep up using walls. But yeah, Soul Tomato value is very good, at least to make up for that fact. Even though we were using Ultimata to try and deal with the Gargs, because there are so many zombies, it's easy for Ultimata to fail to keep up. Ultimata can only do so much damage in one go, so because of how many zombies there are, there'll still be a bunch left after Ultimata has done the thing. But that's what other plants like Thymwarp and Ice Bloom are for. I did have a few runs where I used Bowling Bulb instead. If you place Bowling Bulb on the 2 minecarts in column 2, then you can move around Bowling Bulb and get each of the plant food bulbs to fire down a different lane, so you can get really widespread coverage, which is really nice actually. Something that you can't do usually, since the plant food is very powerful, but usually it just fires down the one lane, so sometimes you can miss some stuff. But yeah, here that plant food is really effective, and the same goes for Ultimato. 1200 damage is nothing to scoff at. It gets rid of a lot of zombies. Even with the cart heads, those still take a lot of damage, so it's a lot easier to deal with them afterwards. This is actually not too much shorter than the original version of the level, which is interesting, because you'd think with all the waves being compressed, this would be a whole lot shorter, but no. Not every wave is compressed from 2 to 1. There are a few waves that are still kept as single waves, not that you can tell in the official release, of course. There is one Easter egg with this level that I wish more people were aware of, but unfortunately no one's pointed it out yet. So near the end of this level, because of the limitations with how to merge these waves together, I had to add one extra wave, and so just before the final wave, there is a wave that spawns in a single Pitoria flag zombie. And there are actually, in gameplay videos from other people, you can actually see Pitoria flag in some of these cases, and I'm surprised that no one has actually pointed it out yet. Or maybe someone has and I just haven't seen it being pointed out, but I mean, shout out if you have seen Pitoria without me saying it. But yeah, Pitoria flag deserves justice. Justice for Pitoria flag. Justice for the great country of Pitoria. Ignore the implications that are actually present within that episode. Oh goodness, old Family Guy. Yeah. So Withering was a level that I had involvement in when it was being made. When this was first made, there was a lot more use of Gothpunk zombies, but to be quite frank, that made this level almost impossible to get out of the early game. It was way too frustrating, so be happy that that didn't make it into the final release. If you want to simulate it, then you can, I guess you can just edit the level yourself and replace some more zombies with Gothpunks. So yeah, I'm just glad that didn't happen. The flower line did have to be moved back compared to the veteran version. Again, because the early games are a lot tougher in this. That chocolate deluge means that there's a lot of chocolate that spawns in at the start, which makes it a whole lot harder to actually keep up in this early game. Ended up changing my habits a bit with instas because of this level specifically. Of course there's usual Ghost Pepper, but I also ended up using Hypno Shroom, since that's in the perfect sweet spot to be able to deal with these Gothpunks. I tried using Nightshade in this run, but as you can see, Nightshade more often than not just hits the chocolate instead. which is really frustrating, but thankfully the other instances are able to deal with this, and somehow this run ended up winning anyway, which is just hilarious. Of course, Primal Sunflower, very necessary sun producer if you ask me in this one. Maybe you could find a reason to use Sunshroom, but I prefer Primal Sunflower as an option in this one. Funnily enough, in every version of Withering, I've always ended up using Daisy Chain and Pyrevine. It's just the perfect combo I've found in order to deal with this particular level, in all of its forms. Of course, Daisy Chain has the stalling gas that can get past the chocolate, and then you also have the single target damage, which is able to help deal with those prospectors, those flying rabbits, and also just, you know, deal with chocolate along the front line. And then, of course, since Daisy Chain is single target damage, ultimately you need a bit of group damage, which is where Pyrevine comes in. You could use Blastberry Vine as well, but I find in this specific level that Pyrevine works better against the chocolate, right? Especially since you get a lot of extra chocolate in this version. It really helps to have Pyrevine along for the ride. I do wish the Nightshade could deal with this level a bit better though. I'm kind of annoyed that this ended up being the winning run in a way, because it means that the winning run involved a plant that really wasn't doing much, but I suppose Nightshade helps a bit with Gargantuars as well. You know, if you get all 3 hits, that's 1,800 damage, which is definitely not too shabby, while also having, you know, the Temperance in order to deal with any other zombies as well. You know, it's faster than Squash, right? Squash takes 25 seconds, this only takes 5 seconds to reload. Honestly, I don't have too much more to say about this. Like, ultimately, once you get past the early game, this mostly just becomes, you know, Withering again, but with extra chocolate. I do think that out of the hot sauce challenges, although, again, keep in mind, like, this was recorded back when hot sauce challenges were called ultraviolet challenges. The name has changed since then, but yeah, regardless, I do think that this one could have used a bit more spice, you know, a little bit more sauce. Like, the chocolate deluge is okay, but ultimately it's just more chocolate to a level that already has chocolate. I think it's a lot more interesting when these hot sauce challenges truly mix up the level by changing how it plays. Like with Penumbra Patrol, you know, because of the difficulty and the added option of using plant food shenanigans, that does have enough of a change to mix up the gameplay. With True Chosen One, obviously you only have 1 seed slot. With Double Time Shuffle Snuffle, I suppose that one's also a little bit weak, but, you know, because 2 waves are being combined into 1, it means that the waves are a lot more compressed, so you have a lot more zombies spawning in at once, and that extra density can make it a lot harder to keep up. Withering, you know, it's just more chocolate, right? The chocolate rain is a bit more constant because of the chocolate deluge, but ultimately, you know, if you already know how to deal with chocolate rain, then that doesn't make this too much harder. I suppose, to be fair, you do have plant bans as well. That mean you can't use, like, you know, Electric Pea Shooter, for example. That can add to the difficulty, but still, ultimately, because, you know, for me, I ended up just using the same strategy again. It's hilarious, by the way, how Solar Sage works on those goth punks, but yeah, ultimately this is just more of the same, at least in my eyes. I'm sure other people enjoyed this a bit more, but to me this isn't much different of a level, and I think more could have been done with it, but, you know, you live and you learn, and I'm sure that in the future, you know, we'll continue to get really unique gimmicks for these hot sauce challenges. So that's all I have to say for this one, which leaves just one more. Ram Out of Batteries is the most recent release. It's the first one that I've made that wasn't released beforehand as a custom challenge, so this one's fully official and original, which is awesome. It took me a while to come up with a winning strategy for the hot sauce version of this challenge, because the space loss that you get in this version is pretty brutal. The strategy that I found involves using Sunbeam as a secondary sun producer, because secondary sun producers are enabled in this. I found that the sun that you get just from sun bombs is kind of lacking, to be perfectly honest, so having an option to use a secondary sun producer does help. I've seen a few strategies that use Soul Tomato instead, and you can actually get some really good value with Soul Tomato if you play your cards right. There's this one particular run that is very impressive, uses some sweet potato and gum nut in order to stall zombies together and profit off of them with Soul Tomato, which more than makes up for the lack of room or ability to use sun producers. The sun bombs do technically provide you with early game as well, which is interesting, so you can focus your instas more on like heavy stuff. I ended up using a mix of Primal Potato Mine, Jalapeno, and Cherry Bomb. I've been using Jalapeno a lot more lately, by the way, like tangent, but because of how fast Jalapeno recharges in comparison to, like, you know, say Cherry Bomb, that heavy damage being able to come out more often is really useful. But anyway, so the gimmick with this one is that you have a bunch of gravestones at the back line as well as speed tiles, so if you let zombies get too close, then they'll just get to your house even faster. You have to be very careful not to let the zombies get there in the first place. But obviously there are ways for the zombies to get there. Either jetpacks can fly over there, or sometimes you can have bug bot imps being tossed into there for one reason or another. Maybe it's from bot swarm, maybe it's from a gargantua. It also means that you just generally have less plant space. At first the graves only take up one column, but of course the further you go on, the more space they take up. So it does help to run a plant that can steal back that space. I ran Cattail for this one, since of course whenever Cattail isn't targeting the zombies, then she'll instead target the graves and help free up some space. And ended up combining this with Techie Bolt and Pyrovine. Pyrovine, of course, since you don't have too much space, having Pyrovine's really good melee damage more than makes up for the loss of space. Right? Like, this is basically like a Melon Bolt in melee form, while also being a vine. And then you have Turkey Bolt as well, since this can help stall any Gargs that spawn in, as well as those Mecha Football Zombies, which are both very dangerous if you let them wreak havoc. It's also because of all the machines we have, all of those heavy instas to begin with. You know, we have Primal Potato Mine. If you plant that at the back line, and those can get launched by the graves, which is fun. Although the first time I tried that in this run, it kind of fell short, since the Primal Potato Mine just ended up launching into column 2, which is obviously lame. You know, had to keep on clearing out the graves in order to be able to place Turkey Bolts in the back line, although I wasn't protecting them with Pyrovine, which means of course they're vulnerable to Gargantua Primes. At the same time, if you plant Pyrovine on that, then eventually the Turkey Bolts get launched out by gravestones anyway, so you have to be very careful with that. Something to watch out for is Flag 4. When Flag 4 comes in, you have a bunch of Bugbot Imps that spawn in column 3. In the regular version of this level, it's not too difficult, since usually you'll have, 3 columns worth of plants to deal with that. But with this version, because of the speed tiles being there, it means that they'll rush to your exit very quickly. They'll rush to your house very quick, so you have to use sun bombs, or use, like, of course Cattail can help deal with them, or use Thymorp as a last resort. Or maybe even explosives. You have to be very fast with that when it comes in. With this particular level, I think a lot of people have enjoyed it, which I'm very happy about. I've enjoyed playing this one too, which I'm very happy that this one's performed well. Like, this is the first, the first Penny's challenge that was ever released. So it deserves something to make it hard, but also fun. I didn't think battery RAM, the original version, was too like too bad. Like, it exists, it's not particularly hard as a challenge, but that's also because it was like the first challenge ever. Like, it kind of had to be that way, so that, you know, people coming in to see the first Pennies challenge would be like, oh yeah, you know, this is a new level type and it seems fun, so I might play more of that. You know, if we made it as difficult as even like what we did for Withering, I feel like these Pennies challenges might have had a rougher start, because Withering is fun, but it is definitely challenging, the original version of Withering. Like, even just ignoring what was done for the Veteran and Hot Source versions, the original Withering is quite a step up from this, or from Veteran I mean. So, yeah. There was one other attempt that I did, but it was with an easier version of this. If you haven't noticed, the gravestones actually have extra health. They have about 50% more health. They take 1050 damage. And originally I was actually planning on having these graves be indestructible, so that you really would lose that space, but I decided against that. I felt like it would be more interesting if the player had the option to reclaim that space. That's also why, you know, you have Cattail as an option here. As well as like Starfruit, you know, that was something that was used by a few more creative players. Interestingly enough, I actually saw someone doing this with Daisy Chain and Pyrovine without bothering to get rid of the graves at all, which is fascinating. Like, it's almost like Close Encounters in a way, you know. That one you barely have any space, but you can still come up with some really effective plant strategies in order to make use of the area that you have. And that includes the Veteran version, by the way. You like barely get any space in the Veteran version of that level. Makes me wonder what Hot Source levels will we come up with for some of the other challenges. Like, some of the original challenges are very creative already, so I wonder what could be added to make them even crazier. Like, I know with Paradoxical Pandemonium, that one's going to be changed with like adding even more zombies. I bet that's what's going to happen. Just because, you know, it makes sense. Like, there are still some zombies that are excluded, right? Like, imagine if they added like mini bosses. They'll probably won't do that, but you know, that would be pretty sweet. And with Close Encounters, like, actually, no, hold on, there's also One Plank Wonder. I think that one's gonna be changed by like making it so that you have less space, like even less space than you already have in One Plank Wonder. Because, like, you know, with that one, the strategy I used for that one, like, side tangent, I ended up using Sweet Potato, just to pull zombies away from the middle plank, because obviously it's very difficult to keep the crocodile safe. If zombies so much as touch that tile, then crocodile will go off. So I ended up using like Sweet Potato with electric currents. Like, one of the few challenges where it straight up just makes sense to use electric current, because Sweet Potato can pull zombies away, and then electric current can take advantage of that fence damage. Anyway, though, yeah, I'm just very happy with how this particular level turned out. I think that this is the best one so far of the ones that have been made. Maybe I feel like Penumbra Patrol could have been interesting, but that one's just too difficult to do outside of with plant food strategies, which is very frustrating, by the way. I wish that one was executed a bit better. I think the True Chosen one, maybe that one could have been made a little bit easier, because, you know, the true Hot Source version is very difficult to do with anything other than Banana Launcher. Although some plant balancing might change that in the future, so we'll have to see how that does. And Double Shuffle is kind of just okay. Withering kind of doesn't really do what a Hot Source challenge is meant to do. So, I don't know, we'll see how these turn out in the future. I do have a few ideas cooking for some future Hot Source challenges, and some of the other peeps also have their own ideas, so maybe we'll get to see some more Hot Source challenges from them too. That's all I have to say about this challenge, and yeah, that's the end of this video. So, yeah, bye-bye.